Time for outrageous predictions at cleveland.com for Ohio State versus Rutgers, 7:30 Saturday night in the Horseshoe. Stephen Means and Nathan Baird will be there. And what might they see live and outrageously live? Stephen Means, what do you have for the Scarlet Knights and the Buckeyes?
Yeah, I'm going to go one of these two games. Ohio State's going to play a lot of its backups just because these games are so close together. And if we're going to bet, it's going to be the home game because you can't rest these guys back to back, especially when you have an 8-game schedule. So I'm picking the Rutgers game for that to happen. And I'm going to say Ohio State's backup quarterback, whoever they send out there, is going to have 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. And here's why. I looked at the last couple of games here when this has been the case when the backups have gotten in. Last year, Chugginoff and Hope combined for 72 yards and 2 touchdowns. All but 11 of those yards were Chugginoff. And then the year before that, Tate Martell had the 10 for 10, 121-yard touchdown game. And then the year before, Haskins and Burrows, 67 yards and a touchdown. So historically, we know what this game is. It becomes a blowout, and it becomes an opportunity to see whoever the next quarterback may be in most years. Last year, excluded from that. But you get to see a guy get extended time on the field, whether it's Stroud or Jack Miller, and I think they're going to take advantage of that and be able to put up some numbers.
I'm going to pin you down on your outrageousness. Pick the guy.
Yeah, I knew you. I'm going to go C.J. Stroud just because Jack Miller has already played, and if they're going to keep things as even as possible, C.J. Stroud has to play next.
Nathan, I think I'm at the point now where if it's not C.J. Stroud, I would be surprised because I think the assumption of taking turns makes sense. Is that what you're thinking too, Nathan?
I do. I think the likelihood of guys coming into this game, it's probably C.J. Stroud 1, Jack Miller 2, and Gunnar Hoke. Sorry.
I think it's an interesting point also, even for guys who are the kind of backups, maybe some walk-ons and stuff, but the guys who don't make the travel roster a lot of times, especially because they have to be very careful with the travel roster these days of like pair and a spare. You've got to have a backup at every position, even maybe places where you wouldn't always have. So for some of these guys, like this is like the worst opponent at home in a limited schedule. This really might be backup showcase time. Even though, Stephen, as you said, your research, it often is against Rutgers anyway. It might be even more of that, which makes me hesitant about what my outrageous prediction is. But I'll stick with it anyway. I'm going to say career high rushing yards for Master Teague because I think they want to get him going. I think they want to build off Penn State. He had 23 carries for 110 yards last week against Penn State. Last year, Master Teague had 200-yard games. He had 18 for 111 against Maryland and 10 for 106 against Indiana. Last year against Rutgers, he had 10 for 45 yards because J.K. Dobbins played a decent amount. J.K. Dobbins got 17 carries against Rutgers last year. So I could see, let's get Master going, maybe really try to feed him a little bit in the first half, get him some work Trey Sermon in, then yes, maybe the second half is some Steel Chambers time, a little more Trey Sermon. But Ryan Day was just talking on Thursday. Hey, he's not a guy with wiggle. We don't expect him to make guys miss. We just expect him to run hard, run through guys. But I think this might be a big game for like the Josh Myers, Wyatt Davis superhighway also. So there might be big holes for Master Teague to hit hard and go. So I could just see like a 16 carries for 135 yards kind of game. So his career high, he had 110 last week. He had 111 last year. So his career high right now is 111. I think he'll break that, have a career high rushing yards against Rutgers. Nathan, what do you got?
So kind of along the same lines of getting guys going, at some point teams have to, and maybe it won't matter, but at some point teams are going to have to sort of sell out a little bit to try to take away Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. I think at some point you've got to make somebody else in that offense beat you. I know it's Justin Fields that's also beating you as much as those two guys are, but at some point you've got to make the other guy prove it. And I think this is kind of the week where maybe that happens. So I'm taking Jameson Williams to have his first career 100-yard game. I think Rutgers does something, extra attention over the top, helping on both of those guys. And I know you can't necessarily do both at the same time, but I think they're going to try to do as much as they can. Teams have to start doing as more to try to limit just how many times Justin Fields can target those two guys. But I think it's time for Jameson Williams' role in this offense to grow a little bit too. We talked so much about all the targets that these two guys are absorbing. And Jameson Williams also isn't on the field in the two tight end set. So that does take away his potential targets in those situations. However, he's on the field enough I think they need to start targeting him more. I think if you can get someone with his abilities more into the offense, make him that third, or I guess in this case, even sometimes fourth option, if you count the tight ends together as maybe one option, it just adds yet another dimension to this offense.
I think I agree with that, honestly. I kind of thought maybe making that one of my outrageous prediction as well, just because what better two games to get these other wide receivers going than Rutgers and Maryland, where you can pick your score, so you don't necessarily have to lean as heavy on Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave.
And it might only take 3 catches for Jameson Williams to get to 100 yards. So
2.
Literally.
All right. Those are our outrageous predictions. Rutgers, Ohio State, Saturday night. Make sure you're listening to our Buckeye Talk podcast 5 days a week, wherever you find podcasts. Read our stories at cleveland.com/OSU. And if you like what we're saying on this video, try our text. It's like us talking with typed words in your phone. 614-350-3315 for a 14-day free trial. Thanks for listening. We'll see you later on our YouTube channel and at cleveland.com/OSU.